Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on planning for a pandemic. My name is Sharon Dean, and I am your facilitator for today's webinar, and I'm the Engagement Officer here at the Chartered Institute of Housing in Cymru. The chair for today's meeting is Rebecca Clark, who is the Head of Membership in the Chartered Institute of Housing. I'm just going to go through a very short presentation just to familiarise yourself with the software we have today. So the webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes. It will be recorded, and a copy of the recording and a copy of the presentation slides will be sent to you approximately 48 hours after the webinar. I'm speaking at the moment. If you have any audio problems, please raise your hand and my colleague Sarah will try and answer your queries in the background, or put any comments in the question box. If you'd like to move the panel from your screen, just click the orange arrow and then click it again then to bring it back. You also have options to contribute through the webinar by putting questions in the question box. The speaker has also agreed that if you'd like to ask the question, please raise your hand and we will unmute you, and you'll be able to ask it directly to the speaker. We do have poll questions today. So when they actually come up, they will come up onto your screen. Just click the answer you wish to answer, and then our chair will present the answers to the speaker for you. That's the end of my presentation. I will now put you through to the chair, who will introduce the speakers for you. Thanks, Rebecca.
Right, hello everybody. You have the pleasure of getting to see us both today speaking. So both myself and Goa will be on webcam for the bits that we're talking. So it's nice to meet you all, sort of, as much as we can anyway. And my dog may join us at some point as well. Turns out he's got a keen interest over lockdown in lots of things to do with housing, and in particular, when we've done our practice runs, he's enjoyed planning for a pandemic. So hopefully you will as well. Just a quick one from me, just to thank obviously all of you for turning up today. I think the last few months have really challenged the way that we think and the way that we operate as a sector, particularly when it comes to some of the key areas and things that Goa will touch on today when it comes to managing risk, and you know, just the kind of strategic things we need to be thinking about from a technology point of view, but then also a little bit about how we cover the staff engagement side of things, and also how we make sure the best interest and the safety of our customers is protected throughout all of that as well. And I think it's fairly safe to say that there's been a lot of rapid change across the sector that previously might have taken years and years to do, and we pretty much had to do it overnight as a result of COVID-19. So without further ado, I'm not going to steal too much more of your thunder, Goa, so hopefully we can get your presentation loaded up, and I'll keep an eye out for any questions anybody has as we're going along, and there'll be plenty of time for questions come the end of it as well. Thanks everybody.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the introduction, and yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to really just talk about some of the challenges that we've been through, but some of the positive and opportunities that we've had in this journey. It's been a really challenging time for everyone, as we all have experienced it in some form, and yeah, I hope that this will be really informative for everyone that's here, everyone that's going to be viewing this. As I said, I'd like to keep things nice and open, and if there are any questions as we go through this, please do jump in. We're a relatively small group, so yeah, it should be. Normally when we're in a room together, I like to get everyone closer and a bit more intimate, just because it makes it more informal. So without much further ado, I will continue. So for those of you that don't know me or haven't met me, my name's Goa Mohammed. I'm Head of InfoSec at L&Q. I've been with L&Q for over 18 months. You'll have to forgive the picture's a bit of an old picture, so a bit more hairier since then. But actually my previous background is actually in banking, media, fintech and e-commerce. And actually for me, this is my first venture into this sector, into housing association. And it's been a great journey, actually. I've really enjoyed it. It's, you know, we're doing some fantastic stuff. It's a great industry to be in, and it's nice to be making a difference to people's lives. So it's really, really great for me. For some of you may, or a lot of you may know L&Q. For those of you that are less familiar, here's some interesting information about L&Q as an organisation. So we are L&Q Group. So we started off in 1963. 32 people invested in us and created Quadrant Housing. Quadrant Housing then joined with London Housing Trust in 1973, and they became London and Quadrant Housing Trust, so L&Q. Then in 2016, they merged with East Thames and formed L&Q. And then we also acquired Gallagher Estates in 2017. And our latest acquisition was that of Trafford Housing Trust, based in Manchester in 2019. So we have been increasingly evolving and growing organisation, and it's just fantastic to be part of an organisation with that much history and that journey. As with a lot of organisations in housing, we are trying to help the housing crisis. The goal is to build 100,000 homes. That's obviously been impacted by the recent pandemic, but we are still continuing our journey into that. We've had a full investment in Microsoft Azure E5 and Azure Stack. That's a lot of what I'll be talking about today. It's been part of a modern workplace journey, and it's just been a really, really positive journey. Not without its challenges, of course, but it's been really, really great. We've got a technology team of 120. That's actually increased a bit more now with Trafford Housing as part of that now. And we were supporting 3,500 users. Now we've got approximately 4,000 users across the group. So fairly large numbers. One thing I'm going to talk about here is a £150 million investment. That was over 5 years. That was 2 years ago in 2017-18 time. That has been adjusted, so there's a caveat there because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and also there was a downturn in the market last year, so we have adjusted that. But the investment, there's still a significant investment in technology, and that's what I'd like to talk about as part of this. Also, we are listed in the Great Workplaces, a Great Place to Work, which we're very proud of, and it's just great to be part of an organisation where we are recognised for the great stuff we do, not only for our residents but for our employees. So I'm going to break out the webinar in 4 sessions, or 4 sections rather. So we've got planning for a modern world. So actually this is our journey to modern workplace. We wanted to plan for what the future looks like. So what does that actually mean? So what does the future look like? So L&Q, when we went on this journey to and this was before I joined actually, when L&Q went on the journey to modernise and be a modern workplace, what does that mean? And it meant looking to the future and saying, what does the future look like? Maybe not next year, the year after, but in 5 years or 10 years, what is that going to be? So typically, you know, we've had to deal with data centres that are on-prem, we've had to deal with technology that are desktops, old CRT monitors. So I'm sure many of you or some of you may remember the times when we didn't have these nice flat screens, we had these big back computers. That was before. But what does the future look like? And actually for us at that time and moving in on this journey was working to a place where we're a bit more cutting edge. So, you know, touch screens, IoT devices, augmented reality, working in kind of 3D visualization, using voice to activate, automation, all of that stuff is the future. And that's been the journey, that's been the investment from L&Q since 2018 to do that. And we've made great progress in that as part of that journey to really modernize. And it's not just for us as an organization, but also to impact our residents, impact all the people that we provide the service for. So that's been really, really positive, and I'll talk about that as we go through on how we've helped facilitate looking towards the future. This is going to be the first of the poll question, and I'm going to throw it out to you all. So can you tell me by way of poll what the difference between these 2 kettles are? So is it the design? Is it the cost? Is it the efficiency, or all of the above, or all to the side? So I'll give you about 30 seconds. It shouldn't take too long. It's not a taxing question. I'm not trying to challenge you or trying to catch you out, but it'll be interesting to get your feedback. Sharon, can you kick off the poll, please?
Yeah, all sorted.
Brilliant. I'll wait 30 seconds, and then it'll be good to get the feedback on what that looks like.
Yeah, I'll let you know when they all come in now. 63% or 75% have voted so far, so we'll just give it another couple of seconds.
Brilliant.
I think most people have voted now. So we've got 14% have said efficiency and 86% have said all of the above.
Okay. Well, most of you are right, which is great. Thank you very much for that. As I said, I like to keep these things interactive. It's always weird being behind the screen. So actually, the fundamental difference between these is that one's a smart kettle, the one on the right, and the one on the left is a regular bog standard kettle. Now, what L&Q's vision was actually, how do we use technology to enable us? How do we do the right thing? So with a smart kettle, for those of you less familiar, a smart kettle connects to your internet, connects to your mobile phone, and you can boil a jug of water. And the advantage of doing that is if you're, if you wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and you want to make yourself a nice hot beverage of choice, whether it's a coffee or a tea, you normally have to go put water in the kettle and then you have to boil it. With this, it allows you to boil the kettle, and as you get up, you just pour it into your mug and you're good to go. And it saves you a little bit of time. Now, in the grand, in by itself, it's a significant price. You're paying about £80 for a smart kettle compared to about £15 for a regular kettle. But the benefit, and this is the vision for L&Q, was that the benefit is that we can save time. So if you're anything like me, you love, I love making a cup of tea. I'll probably go for about 3 to 5 cups of tea a day. So for argument's sake, if I'm making 5 cups of tea a day and I've already got hot water ready to go, I'm not having to stand around waiting for the kettle to boil. Actually, that will save me around about 10 minutes a day. Across the week, that will save me about 50 minutes a day, and across the month, about 200 minutes over the month. So actually, what I'm doing by having technology, it's enabling me to be more efficient with my time. I can use that extra 200 minutes for other things. I'm mindful that my director might be in the audience, so he may be thinking, right, how do I get my extra 200 minutes worth of work out of Goa? But the point is, it enables you to be better, and this is what we should be doing, and this is what L&Q's vision was, to make sure we're doing the right thing. We are enabling our organisation, our residents, by giving them good technology that makes them more efficient. Yes, there is a cost involved, but you've got the difference is it's also cost, it's efficiency, and time. And technology used in the right way can really help you accelerate as an organisation, and we've seen that, as we'll see. The other thing that happened was when L&Q are really good at doing surveys. We get feedback from our employees quite often, and we encourage everyone to participate. And a survey was carried out in regards to technology. And actually, one of the frustrations was the devices that L&Q are using. So often, when you start a new job, you get a device not too dissimilar from what I'm just showing and illustrating on screen. Now you've got, I'm not trying to point at Dell, it could be a HP, it could be anything else, but this is what it looks like. You have a functional phone that can do some stuff, and you have a functional laptop that will enable you to use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and the apps that you need. What the reality is, at home, a lot of the staff, especially when it comes to mobile phones, they have great phones at home, because you've got contracts, you've got really good deals. So they'll have the latest Samsung or iPhone, and they'll have a MacBook Pro or a Windows Surface device or something really cool at home. And what happens is that causes friction, because when as an organisation or as an individual that wants to work, you've got a lovely laptop at home, you can do everything you need to. You go to work and you're restricted. It either doesn't do all the things you want it to do, or it's a bit clunky, or it's a bit slower, or all of these things, and it causes friction. And what tends to happen is people get frustrated, so they don't use the device as much, and then it becomes a blocker, it slows them down. And actually that's the problem. So L&Q said, right, we're going to make sure that the work tech that our employees use is up to scratch with home tech, so there isn't that disparity, and that it will enable them to do their jobs better. So really, it was bringing work tech on par with home tech, and that's really important. So this image made me laugh. I love memes, so you'll see a few more memes coming up, but this is often one of the challenges and frustrations. When you have a bad computer, this is what you often think about in your mind, what you want to do. Luckily, that doesn't happen in reality, but these are some of the challenges. The other thing that L&Q wanted to do back in 2018 as part of that journey is to move away from this kind of model. So a lot of work products and services, including from where I've worked before, you have all these different systems and solutions and companies that provide solutions for us. And while they're great at doing that one particular job or one particular function, whether it's a CRM or a database or what have you, what happens is they don't really work very well together, or they do work together, but they're not as efficient as they can be. So again, it causes friction and challenges. So the goal was to achieve efficiency through harmony of the ecosystem. So we wanted to bring that together and go on a journey where we start tying up our system to one vendor, or not one vendor per se, but fewer vendors, so that we're not having to manage them, but having a tighter ecosystem. Apple does this really well. Microsoft are doing this, Google do it. If you have one ecosystem under that umbrella, then they all tend to work better. And that was the journey, and that's the journey we've been on. So essentially, it looks something like this. So this is business applications. Everything that you saw on the previous slide, actually, Microsoft offer in terms of business application solutions in that. And the great thing with moving to that type of model, which is what L&Q have been on, moving towards the Microsoft Azure stack, is you start tying in all these different facets and bringing them under one umbrella, and all of a sudden it starts making sense because applications interact better. You can get them to share information better, and it just becomes more streamlined, and you have one technology stack, or a tighter technology stack. Also, it simplifies your vendor management, your procurement, your integration, and your compatibility. So all of a sudden, these other things that you wouldn't normally come to mind, vendor management, you're not having to speak to Adobe and Apple and Sony and all these other companies, or Sage or SAP. You can just speak to Microsoft, and then you can manage the vendor a bit better, and you have better management with them. Procurement becomes simpler because you're not having to go out and procure this stuff. It's already part of that ecosystem. There may be a cost involved, or it may be included as part of that, but you can benefit from that and economies of scale. Integration's better, and then compatibility works much, much better. So for us, this is another part of our journey and where we are. So we introduced modern workplace devices. So everyone got a Surface device, whether it was a Go, Book, Pro, and it really helped tie everything together, because we had the latest operating system. We had Windows 10 with the latest version of that. We gave everyone a pen, so all of a sudden you could scribble on the screen rather than having to make notes on a piece of paper and then maybe scan it in or retype them in. You could just draw it in and save them digitally. So we enabled our staff by giving them that, and that was obviously an investment. Also, it allowed us to go to direct access, and direct access means that if someone turns their laptop on, they authenticate, they can connect into the network and work. And the other thing we enabled was, and I'm a big fan of this, is facial recognition. While it's scary, and I'm in InfoSec, so for me it's like, what's the security around that? But actually, user experience, they turn their laptop on, the computer scans the face, logs them in. All of a sudden, you're not having to remember passwords, so that's great. Productivity applications are great. So you've got Windows 10, we've got Office 365, and that gives us, it's all cloud-based, so people can access it from wherever they are. They can access OneNote and OneDrive, and all of a sudden you're not reliant solely on the laptop that you're given. So if you need to work from home one day, you can go to a web browser, secure web browser from home, and then access and move your files that way, which is great. Colleague engagement, and we get team collaboration. So we've got Teams in Yammer that helps with the networking, that helps with the interaction, that brings the business digitally closer together as well as physically, and that's been great. And that's again part of the Microsoft ecosystem. And I'm not trying to sell Microsoft here. I'm just saying that that one ecosystem, if you're on Google or Apple as well, when you have that tying together, it just makes it more efficient. We've got meeting effectiveness as well now. So we've got Microsoft Hubs. We can do whiteboarding because we've given everyone a pen. They've got the application on their laptop. and we've also got those on our Surface Hubs, which are 50-inch screens, which actually allow you to draw on them and collaboratively work on them, which is great. And then remote working for direct access has been really beneficial, because we've got the ecosystem. Direct access connecting in becomes a bit more streamlined. You're dealing with less third parties to actually get that to work. It just works as part of the ecosystem, and everyone's on the same platform, and that's been really beneficial for us. So this has been our modern workplace journey so far, from 2018. So these are some high-level stats. We've got 2,800 Surface devices, because not all of our employees need a laptop. Some of them just use mobile devices, as you can imagine, depending on the type of work they do. We've got 2,800 active users in Microsoft Teams. We've got 1 million plus chat messages. So, you know, Teams is being used all the time for instant messaging, like WhatsApp, and it's been great. We've got 3,200 staff using Office 365, 8 million files all online, which can be accessed anywhere on any device, with some security in place, of course, for visibility. And we're using the stat. We use things like Stream to do video sharing, which is, again, fantastic, because we can record, we can use Teams and do a webinar like this, and we can just literally share it using Stream, because it's already recorded using Stream, and share it across Teams. And that literally takes a few clicks. It doesn't require someone to download it, upload it, save it somewhere else, do this, and this. It's all integrated, and it really makes, really helps save time. It's just enabling your staff to say, this is what you can now do, and it becomes super powerful. And we've got wireless screens deployed. So this is kind of where we've been working towards, and this is where we are since we started that journey and that investment, and it's been great. The other philosophy that L&Q have been working on is making sure that, you know, using the Apple philosophy. So this is something, you know, for those of you that have read Steve Jobs' book, but what's really interesting is that IT should just work. Technology should just work. If I turn on my phone on, I want to do something, it should be a few clicks away. And the philosophy, that philosophy has been brought forward by L&Q. Laptops and computers and applications should not be the blocker, they should be the enabler. Actually, we should allow our teams and our residents to just get on and do what they need to do, not have to worry about, oh, this isn't working, I need to restart my machine. Obviously, we have those challenges from time to time, but the idea is that we should be moving in a direction to the future that things just work, and we're not spending time trying to fix things just to allow people to do a job. This is a lot more closer to me in my space in InfoSec. So people are now avatars. So not Avatar the movie, which is not a bad movie, although a little bit old now, but I know they're making a new one. But people are avatars where actually there's a digital footprint. We're all digital identities and entities now. We have a digital persona, which can be actually accessed through open source intelligence, like so Facebook, Twitter, data we give out willingly, that's available. We are a digital person, whether we like it or not, unless you've been living in a cave or completely off grid because you're very paranoid. So that is the reality. So we need to, because people are digital entities, we need to work digitally. Everything we do has to be focused on the digital world. For me, it's about securing and making sure we're doing the right thing as well with that. But it's moving towards that vision. So actually, you know, enabling the ecosystem and making sure that people have digital, be able to traverse digitally to where they need to go with the right access controls in place, ensures that people can work. And it doesn't matter if they're in the office or if they're at home. If they have the appropriate device in front of them, they can do what they need to do. And we're leaving footprints digitally everywhere, so it's really important that we understand where that is, and it gives us great data. It's really important. And actually, everyone should be and is working digitally. So even people who might say, I'm not in the digital world, likelihood is they have a smartphone or a phone which gives them an email address, which allows them to connect to this, allows them this service, to order stuff from Just Eat or Deliveroo. We're digital. That's the reality. That's the future. We're not going away from that. and it's making sure we're embracing that as an organization, and we have been embracing that as an organization to make sure we do the right thing. And the last slide in this section is really about the investment, and it's not just an investment. So yes, there's a significant investment L&Q have made, but that investment has been across all aspects of technology, not just laptops, not just devices. It's all about mobile applications, services, you know, software as a service, for example, anything online, working with digital platforms that we benefit from. All of these things, cloud-based platforms, they're all about that investment. So that's what the investment's been in, but letting that grow, because actually, while the investment is significant and costs a lot of money, it's the buy-in, it's getting the organization. And the great thing with L&Q and what happened with L&Q as part of that, and I've got to credit my predecessors and my current peers and managers who have helped get that buy-in, is that they've given a tangible vision which is now coming to fruition, and it did come to fruition and is continuing to do so. So that's been really, really important. Okay, so we've got another section. Are there any questions from anyone at this stage before I proceed?
I don't think there's any questions at the moment, unless anybody wants to pop one in or raise their hand to contribute at the moment.
Nope.
No, doesn't look like it. Good to go.
Oh, great! Must be saying the right things then. Fantastic. Okay, so so this actually got so part of our we established a journey, a 5-year journey to really improve our modern workplace. And actually, what we realised was actually we've been planning for a pandemic all this time. And so I'll talk about this. So it's interesting. We weren't planning for a pandemic, but inadvertently we actually were. We were preparing ourselves for this current situation, and it's been a really positive journey. So part of that has been that actually technology and business, the lines are more blurred than they were ever before. Before, historically, it was, right, I need to create a Word document that I need to send out. I need to send out an email. Right, technology, give me an email platform that I can send that out via. That was the way it worked. That's the way it still works in some places. But actually, the lines are so blurred now. Technology can actually enable you, and actually has been enabling the business to do better things. So a great example of that is we've been doing something called a webcast, and our execs are able to use the technology, which they weren't aware was available to them until technology actually proposed that and said, if you want to get a message out to all your staff, you can use the cast function, and they use that to broadcast out. So all of a sudden, technology is now enabling the business. It's actually helping them do something that they may not have known they could do. So that line between technology and business is blurring, and has become blurred, because now technology actually helps the business and business helps technology, and the two run along side by side. They absolutely have to work together, and for us that's been really apparent in this journey. Also, since joining, from an information security standpoint, we've been working with facts, and that makes a big difference. So we capture our risks, our threats, everything that's happening in the security world, in cybersecurity and information security. We work with facts. We don't make stuff up. And that's really, really important. So if we've got any risks and vulnerabilities, so risks is two-legged. You've got risk and you've got opportunity in the same thing. So while something may be a risk, it may also give us an opportunity to be better. For example, working with a supplier that may have some security risks, but actually they will help us grow as an organization. And whenever we capture them factually. And what that means is it helps the business make better decisions. What you've now got is you're having a conversation with your exec team, and the exec team are asking you questions. You're dealing with facts, and it no longer becomes an opinion. So I really like this image, but opinions will always get blown out of the water by facts, always. And when we have that conversation, it makes sure that the business can make better decisions. And that's what technology and information security does. Information security as a function helps enable that, and that's really, really important. And that has helped us along this journey as well, because if you're dealing with facts, you can build metrics. So these are some examples of some metrics that we pulled together, and these are high level and these are a little bit out of date, but the idea is we can start seeing what's happening and then saying these are the things we need to worry about, and we can get that data back and say this is what we need to think about. And then the business can make a decision, because ultimately two things happen when decisions are made. Either technology is trying to justify something, or business tries to justify something. But actually, when you have the facts together, the business ultimately makes the decision, because they're the ones with the finances, they hold the purse strings. But actually, technology can help enable that and help them make the right decisions by giving them the facts. So this is, for me, a really, really close to my heart. So a lot of organizations manage risks, enterprise risks, and that's absolutely correct. And they do that in a very mature way. But when it comes to managing technology risks, they don't. A good information security function will do that. And it's really important that information security or technology manages their risks, not just from a functional standpoint, but what does our landscape look like? It's really, really important. So I like this slide, makes me laugh, but as I said, I'm not knocking risk at all. I'm actually very much a big advocate of it. Risk management is critical, and the biggest thing about risk management is GDPR has changed the game. Technology risk management has changed because of GDPR. Whether we like it or not, and we may agree that, oh, it's just a threat or that's not going to affect us, the reality is that actually we don't want to be the first, nor does anyone else, and that's what we've been doing. We don't want to be the first organization where they've gone in 100% and fined us. And also, it's about doing the right thing. If we're treating our, we talk about looking after our residents and our customers, we should be looking in the physical world, we should be doing absolutely that in the digital world, and that's really, really important. It's about doing the right thing. The other thing that, as a team in information security, that we've been building up to is, sort of planning for the pandemic, is understanding our digital terrain. So, what is our threat landscape? What does that mean? What is cyber risk? What cyber risks do we have? And again, going back to the first bit, it's about what that means factually. Not that we think, put our tinfoil hats on and say, oh, we may get breached because we've got hackers out there that might get us. That is always going to be the case. But if we're seeing stuff that's actually happening, if we've got detections that are telling us that we've got threats through the metrics that we're capturing, we need to understand our threat landscape. And as a team, we've been providing that for our technology team, for the business, to say these are our threats, these are the things we need to think about. And it's about knowing that, about knowing your terrain, digitally especially. There's always the conversation of, and we manage this as well, but which technology are you praying stays accessible? We've all got technology, doesn't matter who you are, that you're hoping that it's not going to turn off, because if it was to turn off, we would have a big issue. Which one keeps us up at night as technology leaders, or as directors, or as exec, or as staff? I can't do my job without this. And sometimes a lot of companies are just praying that it stays accessible. But knowing the digital terrain by mapping that and understanding that and managing that in a risk register really helps you. Knowing your roadblocks, what's going to stop you from going on this digital journey? So if you are moving towards digital and modern workplace, what's the roadblocks? How do you navigate that? How do you do the right thing? Because actually for us, we've had many, many roadblocks. I'm sure many people can testify to that, but actually knowing your roadblocks helps you navigate, because then you can circumvent those and get around those. And that's been a really important part of the journey, and we've done many in that as part of that. And then having the visibility, once you manage your risks in technology, once you manage your landscape, you can then navigate that. You can say, right, we need to avoid this, or we need to think about this. And when it comes to the time, you're not hit with a roadblock and then the whole project falls down, or that whole journey falls down. So I've been talking a lot about build up and what we've been doing and our journey as L&Q, and we've done some great stuff. What was the reality? What actually happened? So when we started getting towards the pandemic and COVID-19 was, there was murmurings in January that there's this virus that's going around. What did that mean for us? So So as an InfoSec team, because we were mapping out our risks, I was speaking out to, we were hearing about companies that were shutting down or closing their office because there was a case of coronavirus or someone had been tested positive. So because we mapped that out and put it as a risk, we spoke to Director of Risk and Technology, and that went to exec to say, right, we should do a working from home day. And the great thing was that L&Q as an organisation, especially at exec level, listened and wanted to hear what our thoughts were. And we recommended together as an organisation to say, right, we should do a proactive working from home day and we should test our capability. So we've got all this great stuff, but we've never tested it. We've never really said, all this great stuff we're doing that, how does it work? So we've had people working remotely, 25% of them potentially at any one given time. Have we had everyone working digitally? We didn't know. So we did a proactive working from home day. So we did a test day planned, and what happened was basically we allowed people to work from home. The business said we might have a bit of an effect. There might be a bit of an impact, but we'll take that because actually it will help us be better going forward. And so we did the test day, and that was really positive experience, really positive journey, because actually what happened was we problem solved in an agile way. We rallied our teams together, we got them into the office, our technology team anyway, everyone else worked from home, and we said, right, let's make sure that people are working from home. If they're having problems and they're logging tickets with service desk, we're going to fix them as we go along. And by the end of the day, we actually were in a place where we'd fixed a lot of the speed issues, the challenges, certain applications being unavailable. We did that. That was a tough day for the technology team, but an amazing day really from an outcome standpoint. They were able to fix those problems. We did it rather than getting the feedback and then doing another working from home day and doing that journey. We did it on the fly. We did it as we went along because the idea was to reduce the risk. And the working from home day actually happened on the Wednesday before the following week when the government said we're going into lockdown. But we monitored it and remediated it in an agile way. Within the day, we had resolved most of the high priority issues, which was really positive. We also used the feedback loop. So after that working from home day, we got a form out and we asked for feedback from our employees. And then we made changes according to that. So obviously it's scary getting feedback from employees. There's always challenges, but actually we were able to really understand what was going on. So that was fantastic. And again, we made those changes. Then coronavirus hit. So that we went into lockdown. What actually happened was on the Tuesday when we went into lockdown, we'd already planned a working from home day on the Wednesday. What that essentially meant was the Wednesday became was a working from home day. The Tuesday became the test, and actually, what was great, it worked. It was, you know, yes, not everything was working. Obviously, there were some people that had to be physically working on site and they couldn't. But anyone who was working digitally through a digital L&Q device was able to continue to do their job, and that was really, really powerful and you know, part of a really good journey. And it shows the importance of being proactive in your testing. Okay. Right, does anyone have any questions before I move into the last section? We're nearly there, guys, so I appreciate you hanging in.
I think we do have one question go, which links into a few of the slides that you just said there. So one of the participants asked what interaction was made with customers and tenants on this journey as you were making all of these plans?
So we had our customer service center that were reaching out to our customers, and we were managing their expectations for work. So that was done proactively as well. A lot of the people that were working were, you know, a lot of it was office driven because there was always a risk of the office being told that we can't go into the office, and that was a global situation. But we did advise our customers to reach out to us in different ways, to call in rather than come to the office. So that was brought in by the business. There were obviously some challenges where physical intervention was required, or customers. We did have a couple of customers who turned up to the office, but obviously were turned away. But they were advised alternative measures to reach out to L&Q. And then we had obviously our building services and caretakers who are still on site. It was focused around the offices in particular. And unfortunately, there is no magic trick to support our residents in their homes if the government said you cannot go outside. We're unfortunately not in a place with robots, but I'm sure we'll probably start looking at robots and how if they can do some of that stuff. But we're working on other digitalization to allow us to manage some of the services through IoT. I hope that answers the question.
Cool, thank you. And I'm sure there's going to probably be a couple of follow-up questions to that. One just slightly different point here, bringing it back to your colleagues and the kind of staff engagement side of things. Somebody's asked, what kind of training and support have you provided up until this point, or are you planning to provide for staff as these things continue to roll out and evolve?
Yeah, so we've been doing a lot of communications through Yammer. So we've got that social media platform, we've got the intranet. When we rolled these devices out, everyone was, when they were given the new device, they went through 30 minutes of training, going through all the tools. We're constantly doing videos that are available on the intranet and through Stream. You know, there's training, we've got learning modules that we do as well. And the idea is that that's evolving as well. So that's helpful, but then there is obviously certain challenges. But what's been really interesting is actually when we had no choice but to go into lockdown, some of the tools that we'd mentioned, people still didn't try. And that's just unfortunately the way it is. So what happened was people who weren't using Teams as much to make video calls, all of a sudden had no choice but to use Teams to have those meetings. And the feedback's been overwhelmingly positive because it's like, Teams is fantastic. I didn't know Teams could do this. I didn't know I could share a document. I didn't know I could have this call and it's so efficient. And that was the overwhelming response. There were obviously a few challenges, but actually it's the hardest thing. And if anyone knows the answer to this, I'm more than happy to hear this, is how do you get someone to do something when you've already asked them to do it? Because there's always a challenge of, well, I'm not going to do that. I don't have time for it. But it is available. We've made it readily available. So rather than trying to force it down people's throats, we give them the adequate training. We drip feed the information, and we keep sending regular communications of what we've got available. And the great thing is, exec have been absolutely positive. So we've been involved in Corona casts. So they'll do the webcast that I mentioned earlier, and they talk about, I didn't know you could do this in Teams, or we can do this, or how about that? We've had that great buy-in from the exec as well as part of that.
Fantastic, thank you. I think that's all of the questions for now. I'm sure we'll probably have a few more as we go into the lessons learned and outcomes section, I'm sure. So please do keep sending those in, and if anyone wants to contribute verbally, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you at any point as well.
Yeah, great, thank you. Brilliant. So yeah, so the outcomes and the lessons learned. So what actually happened? So what did we learn after that? And we're still in the midst of it. So you know, coronavirus and COVID-19 pandemic is still very much upon us. You know, things are changing again, so we need to be agile for that. But what were the lessons learned? So actually, information security and technology help the business make better decisions, both from a technology standpoint and from a business standpoint. And it's really vital to have technology risk management. I put in a quick slide just to talk about what that looks like. This is very high level, but without going into too much detail. When we're measuring risk, we capture a risk, we do a risk assessment from technology. And essentially, this is the guidance that we get. So moving from, so you've got the two, so if you look at very high risk, if we see something that's a very high risk or a high risk, and it's an existing risk, then we need to remediate it. The only time that risk can be accepted is by an exec or someone at directorate level, but at high risk is there for a reason based on our risk appetite. If it's a moderate risk that's existing, we can accept it for a period of time. I don't want to go into too much detail, but the idea is then that then we fix it or we remediate it. And then if we have a low existing risk, we can accept that because it's been categorized as relatively low. It's still a risk, but actually we can tolerate that. And then what we then have is any new risks. So when we do vendor management, what tends to happen, or vendor management or a new solution, we do an assessment on that as well. And then we make a decision. Now, typically, InfoSec has always been yes, no. And actually, we've changed it to should not, or should, or could. And what that means is if we've got a very high vendor or a high vendor risk or a solution risk, we would always recommend you should not. But if an exec or a director wants to run with it, then they sign off on it and accept that. If it's a moderate risk, if it's been managed as a moderate risk, we say you can do it, but you should get it approved by the product owner or someone at the appropriate level, someone who owns the system. And then if it's a low risk, then we say absolutely run ahead with it. You should do it, not a problem. You're never going to be in a position where there's no risk, but it's important that we do that. And that's how we've been managing risk management, and we've done that with COVID. We actually identified COVID-19 specific risks as part of being proactive, because our risks elevated. We had existing risks that went higher because of people working from home and all the artifacts that come with that. So here are some examples of some of the risks that we captured and we've been managing. I've anonymized some of the information because it is sensitive, but the rest of it's fairly high level that has no impact on anyone. But this is what we pulled together so we understand our terrain as we continue to move forward with COVID-19. And also remote working. So actually this starts moving towards remote working. This is the way we've been wanting to move to anyway. COVID-19 pandemic has given us that opportunity to do that and really test that to its full potential. This is a really key point. The business would have struggled without the transition to working from home, without buying into technology investment and the plan. So the initial outlay, if they hadn't bought into it and said, we're just going to incrementally improve what we're doing, we would probably be in a very, very different place. It would have been a much bigger struggle for us if we hadn't invested and proactively worked on looking to the future. It's really, really important to plan ahead. Testing business continuity plan and working from home days really helps understand the capability. If you don't understand your capability, then you don't know what's going to happen when something needs to take place in a business continuity plan scenario. I don't think anyone could have anticipated a pandemic, but actually inability to get to the office is always a plan. Having an office down or unavailable due to extenuating circumstances, we should always plan for, and testing that is really, really important. Without us proposing that we do a test day, we probably would have really struggled for the first week. We would have been trying to find our way. Our technology team wouldn't have been able to be in the office, so that would have slowed them down. It would have been a real challenge for the first week, probably longer actually. But actually, when we went into it, we were in a relatively good place outside of the obvious mental, working from home challenges that everyone has. Being in an isolated environment. Those challenges are obviously things that we're still continuing to work on, but we would have struggled, at least from a digital standpoint, to work. So I've just got one question, and this is a really interesting one. So I'm going to put it out to the audience, so Sharon, if you can do the poll again. How long do you think commercial VPN has been around? Has it been around since the 1980s, the 1990s, 2000s, or 2010s?
Poll has been launched for you, Goa.
Thank you very much. Just going to grab some tea while I can. So I found this really interesting. It got me thinking when I looked at this, and I'll be really intrigued to see what answers we get. I'm mindful we've got 10 minutes as well, so I'll try and get through the rest of what we've got. There's not many left now. I'm nearly at the end.
Okay, I'll just wait a few seconds for a few more people to vote, and I'll let you know what the outcomes are then.
Great. How are we looking?
Yeah, so we've got 33% have said 1980s, 33% have said 1990s, and 33% have said 2010s.
Really interesting. Okay, so actually the answer is, it's actually 1996. And for me, that was a really, really interesting stat. So for me, that told me that we have theoretically been able to almost work remotely for almost 20 years. So 1996, that was when it first came out. It would have taken a few years. I remember when I first started my journey in technology in 2001, 2002, you know, we could dial in. It wasn't great, but we could dial in and do work from home through a phone line. For those of you who remember modem. And it's an amazing stat. So actually, you know, if you think about it, we've had the ability to work remotely for almost 20 years. Yet it feels like most people have discovered the ability to work remotely in the last couple of years, or even just during the pandemic. And it really poses the question, it's a cultural challenge as well as a technology challenge. So you need the technology to support you, but actually culturally, we need to be better to give that ability. So it got me looking into some interesting stats. And actually around the world, 44% of companies don't allow remote work at all. I don't know if I've included a link to the source, but interestingly, is that because they can't or they won't? And that's a really interesting thing. But if you won't, that's a problem. If it can't, then that's more of a technology challenge. But for us, the biggest one is around this flexible working. We've been looking at flexible working before the pandemic, and actually it's helped us accelerate to moving towards more of a remote working environment. I've got a few more interesting stats here. So this is a survey carried out by Deloitte, and interestingly, almost 75% of people said they were equally or more productive working from home, which is an incredible stat, considering that everyone's, you hear about organizations trying to keep people in the office. So if people feel that they're working, and we did a survey as well, we had similar stats at L&Q, and again, it's just a really eye-opening fact. We should be looking towards flexible working. And then 54% of office workers have also said they would be willing to quit their job if they got an opportunity to work elsewhere. So it's about retaining staff as well. If we want to retain staff, we should be looking to provide working remotely. But actually for us, it's all about, the goal should be flexible working. It should be the ability to work as you need to, as long as you can achieve your results within the contracted hours. And we're looking at contracts at the moment. We're looking at what that means for the future. But it should be, my team, our technology team, is very fluid. And actually, it's not about where you work from. It's about getting the objectives delivered. And that's really, really powerful. So that's where we are. So closing thoughts, two really interesting quotes. One's from Callie Williams-Yoss, who's a big influencer out there. And she says, telecommuting, one of the many forms of working life flexibility, should no longer be viewed as a nice to have optional perk mostly used by working mums. These common stereotypes don't match reality. Allowing employees to work remotely is a core business strategy today. We need to de-parent, de-gender and de-age the perception of the flexible worker. And the last one is, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And that's from Socrates, who is a very, very famous philosopher. So that's our thoughts. For us, it's about working flexibly. We've had a positive journey and outcome, and a lot of it's been buying into an overall vision rather than a short-term vision. It's the long-term vision. And we're still on that journey. We're still learning, but we've been really graced with some really positive feedback and journey on our way to dealing with the pandemics. And that's kind of how we plan for the pandemic without actually planning for it. So I'll leave that open for discussion and Q&A.
Brilliant, thank you, Go. That was really interesting. I think some really good kind of useful insights for everybody that's on today to maybe take away with them. If anybody has got any final questions, you can send those in. But I think one of the things that I've thought about and reflected on since we first sort of met, Go, as much as we can do at the minute anyway, and first had our Teams call, is obviously you've come in from quite a commercial environment into housing, and just what challenges have you faced in terms of getting other stakeholders to maybe buy into this way of thinking and trying, because it is following probably a slightly more commercial mindset rather than what we're traditionally used to housing, where we probably haven't invested as much in technology until the last few years. So how have you kind of found that transition?
I think that's definitely been a more challenging one, but I think what's been really great, I came as part of a transformation journey, so I didn't go through some of the pain points some of my colleagues may have gone through. But I think the biggest challenge is the cultural shift and the mindset shift. It's, we've always, and this is not just exclusive to housing, this is generally across the board. We've done it this way, it's always worked for us, we don't want to change it. So while there's regulations to navigate, and absolutely we should be navigating those in the appropriate and correct ways, we can also work with those regulations and improve it. We've had that with third-party vendor management. We've worked with the tender process, but we've embedded a better process that enables us to be better. So it's really working with what we have, but just shifting and encouraging change and giving that change for adding value. And if you can add value, then the change becomes easier. And that's, for me, the biggest outlier is encourage positive conversations and show what that change will mean. And when there's obvious value, you will get the buy-in, and all of a sudden some of those old cultural mindsets start shifting.
Fantastic, thank you. And the next question actually links in nicely to sort of what I was alluding to in many ways. I think obviously as a sector we are quite broad. There's organisations of lots of different sizes. Our membership also includes people that work within local authorities, and one of the questions here has come in about budgets and resources really. So in those smaller organisations that perhaps can't afford to have an IT team the size of L&Q's and others in those kind of bigger organisations, what sorts of practical things or top tips would you suggest to them to start implementing some of this thinking, and maybe just having to manage a bit with what they've got and do that more incrementally rather than a big overhaul like what's happened here?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a great question, and it's completely, absolutely 100% relevant. I think the main thing is thinking about the strategy, the vision, what the future looks like, and we are in a really amazing place. We're in a golden age of technology at the moment, where we're not tied to, if we want to have all these great systems, we don't need to have a data center with loads of server and investment. Microsoft are offering cloud services, AWS are offering cloud services that you pay as you use. So the more you use, the more you pay for. The less you use, the less you pay for. And that works really well for smaller organizations. That's how the startups, that's how the smaller organizations are able to scale up really quickly, because then if they need to grow, then they spend more money as they need to. So looking at cloud services, looking at software as a service is really important. And a lot of startups thrive with that. Devices wise, there's opportunities for bring your own devices. You can put security around that. Using managed services to help you with that is absolutely the way forward. And then reaching out to our peers. For me, I'm very much an advocate of helping other people in the industry. If I can share my knowledge and it will help other companies get better, absolutely, I would do that. So we've got so many options, and it's just thinking about where do you want to get to, having that roadmap and that vision in front of you, and then looking at what can we bring to the table, because you don't have to spend millions of pounds. We've gone in all the way with Microsoft and spent a lot of money on devices, but actually you can think about, well, we need to do our devices first, then our back end, or we need to do our back end first, and then let's look at our devices. You can carve it up in many ways. It's just about thinking about where do you want to be, but looking at what the future looks like, because it's all about our residents, and it's all about making sure our employees can service our residents. And once we can do that, then everything else falls behind it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, a few of the more recent examples that we're starting to see, you know, is work that we can do with in the procurement process and the tender process, and also in the supply chain, and trying to get a bit of consistency, I guess, across the sector, because there's lots of different providers out there that can do these different pieces of software, whether it's CRMs and, you know, whatever it may be, as well as, you know, some of the hardware and stuff that you've talked about, Goa. And I think it's about, if we can have a bit of unity and a bit more kind of conversation as a collective about, you know, the things that we need, that will hopefully help to drive down costs as well, instead of, you know, everything being a bespoke package for XYZ organisation, which is, you know, a large cost driver, isn't it, quite often?
Absolutely, and the cost driver is, the thing is, you know, standards exist for a reason. Standards came about because people got together and created a standard. It doesn't mean standards can't evolve, and it's about getting together and saying, actually, we can create something better. So whether it's through procurement, whether it's about digital strategy, whether it's about security, whether it's about technology as a whole, it's about getting and aligning. Because, you know, HACT is a big topic of conversation at the moment, and HACT is designed to be better, you know, and it's coming together and coming to that middle ground.
Brilliant. And I think we'll do one final question before we let everybody get off and hopefully finish their days. I would say that very carefully, because I know people are working long hours at the moment, but this is a really important question, I think, around the cultural side of things, which you touched on a little bit. But do you think that, you know, we as a sector or some organisations still have issues with things like home working because of the kind of management cultures and things that are in place, and, you know, fears over performance management and, you know, time and hours spent working? You know, we've, you know, I'm sure all come across some instances where that hasn't been, you know, working especially well, and there might be a lack of trust. But, you know, how have you approached that, you know, throughout the organisation to get that kind of culture right?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I've been a victim of that as well, where, you know, it's about the leadership and management. For me, that culture comes from leadership and management, and as an organisation, we are absolutely making strides towards correcting that and doing that in the right way. And as a team, we work in a, you know, I trust my staff, they trust me, and it's all about objectives, and it's working towards, you know, have a look at agile methodology. Without getting the technical side of it, but agile methodology allows you to be able to deliver results in the way that's appropriate to you as an employee. And it's not bound by time, it's not bound by where you are, it's bound about the objective. And it's changing the culture. It takes time, but it's enabling people, and it has to come from the top down. It absolutely has to come from the top down. Because if exec or the directors or the heads of are not encouraging it, we're never going to get away from it. It has to be encouraged. There needs to be a little bit of letting go. There needs to be a shift, and there needs to be there will be a bit of an impact, but that impact then becomes a mature conversation between the manager and this member of staff, rather than it being, I'm not going to let them work from home because I don't trust them. I think they're going to be on Facebook all day, or they're going to go out shopping or enjoy the weather. It's a bad culture, and we're absolutely encouraging that, to move away from that. We still, you know, we haven't completely eliminated it, but, you know, I think that's a people management side of it, but we're investing so much in training for managers to make sure that they have these tools available. We go on courses. I had to go on a course. Everyone that's a leader has gone on being a better manager, being a better leader course, and that definitely raised some interesting questions, but also really encourages, you know, people to talk about their challenges and overcoming them. So it has to come from top down. And it absolutely has to be involved with the business. Business absolutely needs to invest in it, whether it's through training, whether it's through recruitment, whether it's through, you know, following a better performance management process. All of those things tie up.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that was probably our final question, and probably worth pointing out as well, if that is a recurring theme for anybody else that's listening or catching up afterwards, we have done a few webinars and sessions earlier on in the lockdown period about agile working and home working. I think as a sector, that's something that is going to continue to shift. We've seen, you know, going right the way through to even board recruitment at the moment, where people are considering people that live further away from the office and so on, because they're not going to have that expectation to be in the office 9 to 5, 5 days a week and things. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to evolve and, you know, impacts and helps hopefully, you know, see improvements across our service delivery as well. So thank you everybody for joining us and for sending in all of those questions, and thank you Goa for taking the time to come and speak to everybody today. I think it's an important topic and one that, you know, hopefully, you know, we'll see greater engagement as time goes on as well, because it's not just the IT team, everyone, that needs to deal with this, and I think that's one of the biggest messages to come out of today. So thank you. I think we'll hand back to Sharon just for some kind of closing things about how you'll receive the recording and everything like that following on from today's webinar, and you can see Goa's contact details there. We'll share those afterwards, so hopefully a few of the attendees will take you up on your offer, Goa, to kind of pick your brains maybe about their specific situations that they're going through just now. But thank you.
Absolutely, no problem, my pleasure.
Thanks, Rebecca. So it's just to finalise everything then, thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, and also obviously thank you to Goa, Sarah and Rebecca as well. Like Rebecca said, the webinar has been recorded, so a copy of the recording and a copy of the presentation will be sent out within 48 hours. If you'd like to look at any previous webinars we've done, you can do so by going onto our website, www.cih.org/webinars. So again, thank you for today. There is a short survey after the webinar. If you could complete this for us, it's only 5 questions. Just let us know what webinars you'd like to see in the future. So once again, thank you everyone. Take care, and the webinar is now finished. Bye for now.
Thank you.